Roaring fire. I force my eyes open. At some point, my surroundings had transformed. A shattered town crumbling to the ground around me. All around me. Was this Socotrine? Under a burning sky, a rainbow-colored fire was ravaging the world. Panic seizes my heart as the fire swells, spreading its burning tendrils through the area. Daddy, Daddy, a familiar voice calls out. Kalia? She had fallen a short distance away. A giant mass of burning wood and stone was pinning her arms down. Kalia! Horrified, I dash over to her. It's pretty loud. Ooh, Daddy. Her face contorts in steer-tained agony. It hurts. Hold on, Kalia. In a panicked frenzy, I grab at the mass pinning her down. Okay, so I'm fine with the screen shaking, but does it have to shake the text I'm trying to read? Because that's immensely annoying. A hissing sound pierces the air as my flesh bubbles from touching the rainbow flames. Goo. Ga. Goo-ga. That's up there with Gug-hoo-goo. Somebody gets their throat slashed. Ksh, Gug-hoo-goo. Kalia screams as the twisted mass shifts weight over her pinned arms. It hurts, it hurts. Wah. Making bacon pancakes. Making pancakes, making bacon pancakes. I take some bacon and I make it in a pancake. I push until I can no longer feel my arms, but it doesn't budge an inch. Damn it! Tormented by Kalia's cries, I howl in frustration. Before long, my singed arms fall limply to my sides. I drop to my knees. Ooh, hick. Dizzy-headed from the smoke, Kalia's feeble voice barely registers in my murky consciousness. At this rate, Kalia was going to die. No, I won't accept a fate like that. Pulling myself together, I scan my surroundings. My eyes dart along the ground, locking onto a suitable object, a blackened shard of metal with a saw-like edge. I feel my sanity leave me as I grab it with trembling hands and lift it over Kalia's trapped arms. Ah, ah, ah! Her heart-wrenching cries fill the air as I press the metal's jagged edge into her arm. Oh no! She's delimbing her own daughter. That's terrible. But I don't stop. Ooh-ah! Howling and crying like a demon possessed, I saw vigorously feeding vivid red into the roaring fire. You know, I mean, far be it from me to say that this game doesn't really know a lot about what it's talking about. But I feel like with a child especially, if you just like not randomly, if you just started sawing off their arms, they would very likely faint from just shock. But anyway, before long I hit bone. And I can't say that with all certainty. I'm not going to act like I know a lot about anatomy, but, you know, from what little I do know, I feel like that might be the case. We didn't have time to saw through it. Ha, ha, ha! Pouring strength into my frame, I grab what remains of her arm. Ugh. I twist and whip up. With a sickening snap, the bone breaks. The heat of encroaching flames. The screen shaking of collapsing buildings. Driven by those menacing sensations, I hastily start cutting into her other arm. So, like, is she trapped by, like, the letter U? Like, what is going on? What has her pinned? Kalia had stopped screaming at some point. Well, good, because that could be really annoying. I could tell from her faint, ragged breathing and weakly shut eyes that she was at her limit, though. We were out of time. Praying it was enough, I grabbed Kalia with both arms. Now, I think that's rude to say that in your description of what you're doing. Just say you grabbed her. You don't have to mention that you got arms now that she doesn't. Then, planting my feet, I grip my teeth and pull with all my might. The grotesque sound of meat tearing culminates with a gut-wrenching pop as Kalia's joints give and she separates from her trapped lower arms. You know, So I like to look at visual novels from the perspective of a writer, which I like to pretend I am. But when writing a scene that is graphic involving a younger character, I usually find it's important that, especially from the perspective of whoever is saying it, that perhaps there should be a little bit more tact behind it. Because in my book, there's a part where a younger character gets injured, but the person who's trying to help them, who is a close relation to them, doesn't talk about it like, I heard his meat tearing from his rest of his body. Like, there's better ways to describe that get across how graphic the situation is without making it sound like it was written by a fucking goof. Stumbling backwards, I pivot and take off with her in tow, weaving through the burning wreckages that block our path. Time and space seem to blur as I run, but eventually we make it to a safe location. Ha, ha, ha. Gasping for breath, I lower Kalia's limp figure to the ground and examine her arm stumps. It seemed the fire had cauterized most of her injury. Well, isn't that just great? It had left strangely patterned burn marks in the process, though. Ming. In an attempt to fashion makeshift bandages, I try and tear several strips of fabric from my shirt, only to discover that my fingers are too damaged to perform the movements. My hands were covered in the strange patterns as well. Kalia. As the tension leaks from my body, the pain begins to resurface. I lift my head to look up at Socotrine's burning sky. That's when I notice. All around me, screams and groans were filling the air, creating a din of unending despair. Oh good, little bit of Zetsubo. Why? Why is this happening? I can't feel the rain. With great difficulty I manage to bend my fingers back, but though I can clearly see the falling rain hitting my hand, I couldn't feel a thing. Let us draw the curtain on this sordid scene, and move on to more pleasant surroundings. Ugh. One day had passed since I patched up Kalia and Autun. Between Kalia's amputated arms and the severe burns on Autun's hands, it wasn't difficult to deduce what had happened. At my side, Triss peeks over to where Kalia is resting. He looks back and forth between Kalia's absent arms and his own intact ones. Gugh. Ugh. A bead of sweat rolls down Autun's face as he writhes in pain. It's spreading again. A bizarre phenomenon plays out before me. Without warning, the marked areas on Autun's hands begin to glow. When the light subsides, I observe that the burn patterns have crept up his arms. The same thing was happening to Kalia's burns as well. It seemed the wounds inflicted by the unusual fire were harmful even after their initial infliction. See, this is what I mean. Like, this would have been a much better starting point because it's way more mysterious and interesting. Even if the writing is still kind of bad. It was like a disease, or a curse. I had to find a way to treat it before it did any more damage. Watch over Daddy and Kalia, Triss. Food, water, and medical supplies had already been set down in arm's reach of the bed. Don't leave. Don't let anyone in. Retreating into my room, I make preparations to set off. A locked drawer. For years, I had only ever touched it to maintain its contents. My heart beats not. After inspecting them one by one, I tighten a holster of throwing knives around my leg. She says, "Go, ninja, go, ninja, go." As I do, my eyes drift over to the proof of my existence. A razor-sharp butcher knife that curved to a tapered point. Breath does not come from my mouth. I think you should say it properly. My mouth breathes not. There's a loud engine going on out of this window here. You might not have heard it because I've got the microphone turned down a little bit, but it was loud for me. And I live across the street from a beach. The scratches and chips that marred it were proof I had succeeded in carving a path to this day. Yes, the knife has seen use. We know. Even after all these years, it still felt natural in my hand, as if it were but an extension of my body. Her arm is complete again. Good for you. My feet do not tread upon this earth, for I am colorless. I mean, is now really the right time to talk about how damn good of an assassin you are? I mean, your goal right now is to save your family. I feel like that should take precedent right now. The weight of steel was one of the only absolute truths in life. Sincere and free of lies, it was that quality of purity that enabled it to spill blood with ease. The past was never something I could escape, was it? Concealing the knife on my person, I locked the door behind me as I leave. You know, things are getting a little grayscale, so you know it's serious. In contrast to yesterday's chaos, a somber silence had laid claim to the hazy morning air. The situation had changed since yesterday. At some point, the inextinguishable fire had dissipated all at once, ending just as abruptly as it had begun. Only the smoldering remains it left behind could be seen now. I'll check up on Mallory first. Though it takes longer than usual to get to the Bassia household with all the debris, I arrive without complication. While their house appeared to be untouched, many of their neighbors had been less fortunate. I find Mallory in the streets, kneeling over a victim she seemed to have pulled from the rubble. Mallory. Though I call out to her, she doesn't respond. It is only when I place a hand on her shoulder that she turns to face me. Anime. Glazed, hollow eyes that gazed through what they were supposed to focus on. Every person I had passed on the way had looked the same. The fire. I done. Burn marks. Socotrine. Dia. Where is I done? Did he survive? I pull her together by giving her something specific to focus on, but Mallory shakes her head. One of his colleagues came by, and I don't know what to tell the children. There's no need to tell them now. Worry about that later. How are the children's conditions? They're inside. Alouette hurt her leg, but other than that, she's okay. Lynette and Dia, though. I'll show you after I finish treating this man. Though her hands were trembling, she doesn't stop bandaging the wounded man before her. It was like a desperate attempt to remain moving, as if she'd collapse under the pressure if she stopped. It was a way of averting one's eyes from reality. Forget it. Give up on him. Oh, if you insist on trying to help, conserve your energy for someone who has a chance of making it. A ragged avulsion splitting the femoral? Limbs entangled at impossible angles, and copious amounts of blood. It was clear from the glance that the man was already at death's door. Ha! Fuck him. Mallory hunches over and closes her eyes as her body shivers to a halt. For a moment, I worry she'll restart her mindless act. You're right. But then she rises to her feet, determination filling her eyes. Let's head inside. A house painted over with silence. It was not long ago that laughter filled these halls. Guided by Mallory, I make my way to the room the children are in. Upon entering, a pitiful scene greets me. Laid out on the bed were Lynette and Dia, their bodies disheveled and bandaged, their breaths short and ragged. At the other end of the room, Alouette was sitting against the wall in a state of stunned silence. Her leg was injured, and she didn't look capable of moving, but fortunately, she didn't appear to be burned anywhere. Have you noticed, Mallory? Yeah, their burns won't stop spreading. The rainbow fire did this to them. Rainbow fire. Their burns were even more extensive than Kalia's and Autun's. Several parts of Dia's back and face seemed afflicted. How can you tell? Is he lying on his... I guess, if he's lying on his side, maybe. While burn marks were scattered over almost a third of Lynette's body. I'll find a way to save them. Mallory's eyes widen at my declaration. How? Information is the first thing we need. I'm going to scope out ancient news. What's an ancient news? I've never heard of... Is that supposed to be like ancient news? If anyone knows anything about the rainbow fire, it's the Ulls. Anime, are you sure? I won't fail. Okay, so before you were saying that trying to heal people who were beyond healing was a mindless act, and now you're about to commit a mindless act. Granted, I know it's supposed to be like people you're really close to, but still, I think someone's a hypocrite. Kalia and Atsuna are in the same situation after all. Oh, good. So at least there's some, personal gain to be had from it. I'm not just helping you. That's not what I mean. You're always like this. You always try to bear everything by yourself. It worries me. I just want you to know you have allies. Lean on me. Let me help. No, you shouldn't come. It might turn dangerous and you'll only slow me down. Anime. You can help by stocking up on supplies. I also left Autun and the twins at home. I don't know how long I'll be gone, so I want you to check up on them. It still looked like she had something to say, though. I want you to believe in me, Mallory. Trust me. I clasp her hands. Okay. Just be careful, alright? Promise me you won't do anything too reckless. I promise. The two of us entwined pinkies like in the old days. Oh, that's adorable. Hoo-hoo. We'll get through this, okay? Yeah. I'll be off then. As I turn to leave, my eyes catch on Alouette standing in the corner of the room. Though she said nothing, her face spoke for itself. It was as if she were lost in a sea of uncertainty. Before I know it, I find myself drifting over to her. Maybe it was because she reminded me of a certain someone, but somehow I felt a desire to not leave her alone. Alouette. I place a hand on her shoulder. Auntie? The adults are going to be busy from now on. We need you to watch the house and take care of Lynette and Dia while we're gone. It's an important job. Can you do it? She nods back at me, her expression regaining a bit of color. Alouette will do her best. Giving people a responsibility in a crisis forces them to compartmentalize. The feeling that one had some control over the situation. It was an essential illusion. Please make Linny and Dia better. I will. I don't think she will. This is a long shot. Eyes full of innocent hope. With that image burned into my mind, I set off toward my next destination. H&N News. A state-of-the-art... Oh, it's a hospital. A state-of-the-art hospital that had been renovated with the latest of UL technology. Wait a minute. This is the exact same image. This was destroyed. This is all destroyed. Like, everything was destroyed. Not just this one building. You telling me they got this all rebuilt in 4 hours? Come on. Latest of all technology. For many in Socotrine, it stood as a symbol of hope. It had served as the forefront of the Verloran Master's successful campaign to eradicate the plague, after all. As expected, scores of people had already gathered in front of the main entrance. Slowing my pace, I drift through the crowd, catching bits of conversation as I pass by. Heard? Seems they already know a way to treat the burns. Something similar happened back in their homeland, calling it the Fire of Collapse. I know, but why did it just blow out the other day? Of about 20 people entered through the come back yet, apparently a cure already existed. That seemed too convenient to be true, though. Heeding my intuition, I take several rounds of the perimeter and commit the layout to memory. It seemed victims with conventional injuries were being accepted at the side entrances, while only those with deviant burns were being admitted through the main one. Why is security so tight? Squads of the Socotrine Guard were stationed everywhere. Even the surrounding streets were heavily fortified. Considering the dire straits of the rest of Socotrine, it was odd they had mobilized such manpower here. As I finish a rotation around the complex, I overhear a commotion at the main entrance. Why can't I go? My little boy is in there. We've already made this clear to you. Entry is prohibited to all but patients and medical personnel. Please, I just want to know if he's doing all right. Wait, is that them? Look, they're coming out. The crowd stirs as a column of people emerges from the hospital. All of them were scarred with the etchings unique to the Rainbow Fire. However, their burns look different, don't they? They're really cured. Something wasn't right, though. Of the 20 that had supposedly gone in, only around half returned. What do you mean? Can't you just cure them like the rest? The mother from before was shouting frantically at a doctor accompanying treating patients. Please understand, your son's injuries are very intensive in comparison. He is in critical condition, and as such we need to continue monitoring. Why won't you listen to me? He's such a skittish boy. Waking up in a place he doesn't know, surrounded by strangers, he'll be so scared. That's why I need to be there for him. I'm sorry, ma'am. Why are you apologizing? Just let me in. Let me see him. The mother pushes past the doctor and tries to enter the hospital, only to be held back by the officer from before. "Stop right there! Let me go! My son is in there!" Gah. The officer clutches at his wrist as the woman flails wildly under his grasp. "She bit me!" Unsheathing his sword, he slams his hilt against the woman's head and drives her to the ground. But even then, she doesn't stop trying to enter. How many times do I have to tell you before you get it through your head? You can't go in. Enraged, the officer begins to kick and stomp the crawling woman mercilessly. "This is what you get for worrying about your son. Ah! Let me see him! Let me see him!" The woman breaks into sobs as she tries to shield herself from the crushing blows. "Kneel!" Or is it no? No! No! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! The officer brings his foot down hard, silencing her as she tries to call out a name. Stop it! Like, yeah, dude, like, what the fuck is your problem? With an angry growl, the officer's partner grabs him by the collar and shoves him away. Clearly the stress of the job has gotten to him. But the woman had already been rendered motionless in the dirt. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "I can't stand people like her. They act like they're the only ones hurting in the world. Makes me sick." Turning his back on the woman, the officer spits into the dirt. Yeah, this guy should totally have a job. You can't take it out on the people. So we should promote him. Many of them are going through the same thing, you know? Take a break. Cool off. I'll get someone to cover. "Doctor, can we get a stretcher and take her through the side entrance?" "Oh yeah, because being curb stomped, that's a conventional injury." Yes, I'll get someone on it right away." Meanwhile, the palpable tension had built up in the onlooking crowd. How could he do that to her? Are they hiding something? Why can't we go in? The guards on post tighten their formation as they bear the brunt of the crowd's resentment. Attention, all victims suffering deviant burns from the fire of collapse. Please line up in an orderly fashion. Stretchers will be provided for the incapacitated. For the remainder of the day, I continue to observe the hospital's activities. However, the same trend only continues to persist. 30 people would enter, but only 14 would exit. 40 would go in, but only 20 would return. Like clockwork, the cycle repeats again and again, again and again. So it's come to this. Entrusting Kalia and Autun's lives to odds I didn't understand was unthinkable. There wasn't anything else I could discern from outside, though. I wanted to learn more. If I wanted to learn more, I would have to infiltrate the building. Cue the Mission Impossible theme.